Docker stuff or something like that. Something diagrammable. So that's a bit of yes.
Det er Mette sgu meget, hvor så en stor omgang her.
I hope so.
Jeg spiser ikke så.
Under promise or the case of the tail.
Det er jo bare løb. Hvad så? Nej. Det er dating nogle gange. Jeg er ikke så vild med det her. Helt med nogen, der bruger på koncerter.
Taking relevance as a programming.
I hear that voices.
We got second talk today from Edward. I personally work with Edward in Deloitte and later as freelancer in the same project. So looking forward to hear how to stay relevant in this age.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, today I want to talk to you about the question, the looming question that is standing over us, or so to speak, an elephant in the room. I know that, well, some people might have a job security, a pretty impressive job security when it comes to telecommunications and aircraft, that's for sure. But what about the rest of us? Well, let's get into it. Yeah. I'm going to show you this roadmap, which is also on the roadmap. I'm going to explain a little bit of the background, what was my professional exposure to machine learning. As Paulina mentioned, we worked together on a project where AI tools were banned, and I'm not sure if it's a contractual obligation, but we weren't exactly allowed to use AI to generate code. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience with Copilot, different AI tools, and give you a little bit of a perspective on a political and economic angle. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have also their own opinions, and I think there's a lot to talk about. I wanted to add a bit of a tiny grain of skepticism to all of this. I think that's also a very important step when evaluating any emerging technology. And I'm going to talk about the project I've been working on as of, well, I might say I've been working on it for a very long time, but in context of AI, starting from a couple months ago. And I'm going to give some reflections, some change on what changed in my opinion on AI, what I thought was maybe wrong, or maybe I expected something that wasn't really there. But yeah, I haven't introduced myself, and now in hindsight I see that giant name. My name is missing here, but my name is Edward Kivenko. I'm originally from Ukraine, but I've been working in Denmark almost my entire professional career. I've done quite a bit of open source and also free open source software, both as an individual and as an employee. So I've been, I might say I'm one of the lucky few who got paid to do open source. I like programming. I like programming maybe a little bit too much, where people criticize me for being a little bit too obsessive. So I tried to learn a new programming language. Not every year, but maybe I will catch up eventually. So I've been coding around 13 years, but I started a little bit earlier. So yeah, what else? I've started noticing that I'm spending less and less time programming and doing the stuff I enjoy, and it's probably not for me, and I wanted to talk about things that cause that. But before we move on, I would like to know a little bit more about you. How many of you are programming? Okay,
Four.
that's a lot. That's a lot. And how many of you are worried about the prospects in relation to artificial intelligence and all the... Okay. So am I. Yeah. Wouldn't it be sad if somebody came and took that all away from us? Yeah, it would. I don't know for better or for worse, but for me it was a bit earlier before ChatGPT. Yeah, the reality happens. The invasion of Ukraine, stuff happened. I was doing an open source project, or I was paid to do an open source project, and then things happened. I had to prioritize other things and just figure out more of basic things in life, like mental health and safety of my family. And of course, I'm not alone in this. I'm just sharing my reflection on this. So, after a while, I've been lucky to get my first exposure to machine learning in a professional world. I joined Deloitte, and this is where we work with Paulina, and I was lucky to work on a project which was doing synthetic data generation. And synthetic data generation is maybe a very broad topic, but it's very much connected to privacy. And there's a pattern where people use this GAN-based networks to generate synthetic data out of real data, but so it's private. But also with one critical difference between just random data is where we retain some correlations between the original data and the new synthetic data. And those networks are in principle very simple, and the tooling actually is very simple. And the project was about doing just taking a large database and figuring out the structure and feeding it into pretty much existing tooling to do something like this, where we take real data, pass it to one piece of model, then it generates a bunch of stuff, and then this discriminator figures out whether it retains the correlations from the original data. And those correlations might be how many people live on certain streets and stuff like that. And this project was concerned with the data that was mixed in nature. Some of it was public, some of it was private. And I've learned a bit about the practical part of synthetic data generation. It's actually fairly simple, and I know a lot of companies are struggling with creating a reliable test data for their tests, for their on all the levels of testing. And that was quite fortunate for me to be exposed to that kind of technology. There's also a book that I was lucky to read at this time, which goes over all the broad concepts and who uses synthetic data, what are the ways it's generated and stuff like that. It's a very interesting book. I'm not going to go into details, but it gives an insight on what divides pretty much the synthetic data from the data that's supposed to be private. And yeah, I could recommend that book if you're interested in improving the quality of tests. And that project was successful. It moved on, and I moved on to my next assignment. I was busy there building not the training of that model itself, but the ETL to feed that model with the data. And yeah, it went all right. And that's around the time when ChatGPT and all of the related technologies started to pop up all over the social media, so it's very hard to ignore. and I signed up to check it out. And of course, I was amazed it was doing so well. I was immediately afraid that I'm gonna lose, that we're all gonna lose our jobs, basically. But luckily for me, my next project was in a place where no AI tools were allowed, and that partially due to a heavily regulated nature of it. Yeah, it's a very refreshing and good experience, and now I see a lot of people complaining that they cannot get back to normal programming without the assisted experience that they get used to. So yeah, I was lucky to not to get into that. I've been still using ChatGPT to study. Studying is perfectly legal, and no AI-generated code is committed to the code base. There's no chance for introducing hallucination in that code, so everything's fine. And part of that project was one of the things that motivated me quite a bit is learning Clojure from scratch. I mean, I wasn't learning programming language from scratch because I knew a fair bit about programming by then, but Clojure is a bit of an esoteric language which is deeply rooted in Lisp and deep tradition, and yeah, what can I say? I wouldn't advise it unless you're curious, but to me it was an interesting exercise, and I delivered quite a lot of features using Clojure. And Clojure in its nature is very similar to JavaScript and Python. It's really amazing how people now don't really recognize that, because this language is not that far away. The only thing that sets it very far apart is how easy it is to do macroses. And yeah, they can be tricky because there are macroses to write macroses, which is a whole different dimension of complexity, which to me is also a fun exercise, because I like compilers, I like working with that kind of stuff. But I mean, fortunately for the project, and maybe unfortunately for me, writing macroses is not really a thing that people do, because it creates quite a significant level of complexity. So it's kind of an anti-pattern by now. There's still a lot of third-party libraries that ship their own macroses, so you can do stuff in an easier fashion, which actually introduces quite a lot of complexity, because they all come with the new semantics. So you have a language that you understand, and now suddenly you don't understand it anymore. Just to give you a bit of a taste of Clojure, it's not giving it justice. Yeah, if you haven't coded it, it's just syntax, but it's really not that complicated. It's pretty much the same as any other programming languages. This is a basic function definition. It's really not that complicated if you invest a bit of time in it, but it's also I wouldn't say Lisp has overstayed its welcome, but there are some technologies that do certain things better than Clojure. In some areas it still shines though. Yeah, and I think thanks to AI, I've managed to learn much quicker, and I've learned this particular part about macroses way faster than I would have had I had to research it on my own. And yeah, I was already worried whether I'm relying on AI too much. And then I got a chance to work on a different project, and I had a chance to try the Copilot. And I know that a lot of people have tried it before me, and probably had an opinion already on it. I was really impressed. It's what can I say? You all know it. You just write a function type annotation, and then it just generates the code. Like all the interesting part is gone. Yeah, but at the same time, I was getting even more worried. Like, is my brain even working here? Like with this code, it's just some outline of the design that I'm providing. There's no programming involved. Yeah, and then there comes another project where I got to work with a bit more exciting tooling, even more complicated. So Babel is a transpiler. So you might say it's an alternative for macroses in JavaScript. So the project was about looking at the large code base and generating a certain type of compliance report out of it. And I just spent a couple days and coded it with the help of Copilot. It was amazing. I thought that this library was a bit out of my reach, as it was a bit too convoluted, a bit too complicated. As working with abstract syntax trees are, it's not the easiest task. Normally people don't do it. So if you resort to it, normally you want to avoid it. Just like in Clojure, macro says no go. We will also. I mean, there's plenty of community maintained stuff written using that library to enable all sorts of things. So all the entire web is powered by this library, but using it really is not a thing. And I mean, in the end, I settled just replacing everything by regex because people wouldn't be able to maintain that. I mean, I had my fun, but whoever needs to maintain that, they also need to have their mental health. So yeah, that was Copilot. Very impressive, but even more self-doubt. Another project done. Who is doing all the work? Am I working? It's like, what is going on? Because it's really not a nice feeling to feel like it might be actually true that people say that the job is gonna be gone. There's no coding in the future, and we're gonna all do, I don't know, some no-code solutions. And it was moving fast. A lot of the news, and you know, we live in the same informational space. It's just a storm, and I thought that I was prepared for it, but well, what comes with experience is that you learn that you're never ready for the next thing. And JavaScript was very confusing at the time when it was heavily developed by many companies. Many companies contributed to it, a lot of sponsorships, a lot of libraries being developed, which created a whole effect called JavaScript fatigue, because there was so much change, so many breaking changes in the libraries. And I thought that this is going to be the same. No. And then, oh well, this picture is too big, but then we look at the political and economic angle of all of it, and it's like, it's getting completely wild, where all this technology is getting weaponized by countries, by country agents to impact stock markets and do all these things. And there's this guy whose name is Yanis Varoufakis. He's an ex-economical minister of Greece. He was employed by the company called Valve, which is a big monopoly in selling computer games or digital goods. So he was helping them establish that monopoly, I guess. And he's a big doomsayer of this techno-feudalism, a new thing that will just take us all, and we're gonna be all slaves to the new AI and all the generative algorithms. It's very scary stuff. Yeah, I mean, I can recommend checking out what he's saying. A lot of his the things he's presenting checks out. So I tried to do a bit of research on whether it's factually true, with the help of AI, because there's just too much data to go through. But a bit of it is actually factual. He's saying that there is a huge disparity between companies that prioritize AI and learning and how they spend their revenue, and that they in fact spend a little fraction of their revenue on labor and salaries in comparison to traditional or more traditional companies, I don't know, like manufacturing or something like that, where a lot of money goes towards labor. Yeah, big changes, very scary, and there's no denial. I mean, there's no shame in being a little bit fearful of the new technology. But luckily for us, internet is not an echo chamber, and there's different thoughts, different ideas, and skepticism is always a thing, and this is a thing that I really didn't like when people expressed skepticism about the new JavaScript libraries. I was very angry, and how come anybody's criticizing a new JavaScript library that I enjoy so much because it's so clever. But here it's more than that. It's actually bigger, and there is a lot of bold claims of how efficient it is, how well it performs. And when we read pre-releases from OpenAI, they just overblow the significance of their achievements. It's which is also a bit connected to, well, some sort of speculation. So if you're worried about the AI, as Varoufakis says, we need to use the tools of, well, I wouldn't put it an enemy, but of the opposite side. And the tools are social media. And on social media, there's two particular influencers that I've been very fond of, which is Internet of Bugs, which is a channel dedicated to debunking the statements about AI. For example, they made a quite rigorous study of what Devon AI was doing and tried to repeat their steps and to come to a conclusion that it didn't in fact achieve anything, even though they claimed that it did. And another one is the Real Senior Dev, which is also a very insightful channel that goes deep into white papers to go and look at the numbers of what actually they're saying and what is actually being measured, how it's actually being measured. And it's really a material for another presentation, but they really go and explain with numbers and with the facts that it's not exactly truthful what is being marketed to us sometimes. But skepticism is fine, but it's also, it's not going to go anywhere. So overcoming the fear of this technology is also quite healthy. And it's still a very powerful tool. It's still a very powerful tool and we all know it. We at least have one pretty significant upper hand over AI, is that, well, we have the domain expertise, which is very hardly expressed in some textual form. So I think it's unlikely to replace us there, at least. But there's also something about learning a little bit more about AI. There's something about learning what you fear and learning what are its strengths and weaknesses. And definitely you probably have seen a lot of these weaknesses. You have experienced it, you have experienced hallucinations, you've seen that at some tasks it performs extremely poorly, which is expected, and I guess it's good in some fashion. So as long as we focus at treating those tools as enhancements to our capabilities, not as replacement, then maybe it's okay. But so I decided to take a pivot and just embrace everything. I bought all the subscriptions available just to figure out what it's gonna be, how it's gonna work, and I bought all the popular ones. Well, there's not enough money in the world to buy subscriptions in all the startups. So so I experimented with a bunch of local tools as well, local AI IO, which is kind of a private alternative to a tool like Copilot. I must say it doesn't really work even on Apple Silicon. It doesn't really work to the extent that would be useful, especially in programming languages that go beyond JavaScript and Python, which makes it absolutely useless for me. Well, not absolutely, but to a large extent. And also, Ollama, you probably have heard of it. It's like Docker for models. But again, we look at Ollama and we can download, 40 billion parameter model, which weighs 40 gigabytes, but then you can't run it. So you have to pay around 15,000 Danish crowns to buy a graphics card that could run it, potentially. So it looks like privacy is out of the window. Of course, there are cloud solutions to where we can rent some hardware and do stuff, but I've decided that, okay, I'm embracing AI tooling. Privacy is out of the window. There's no way to protect my personal information anymore if I'm getting to use these tools. yeah, so I stopped at my previous project. So I was free out of AI jail. I'm free to use anything I'd like. That's partly why. Yes, and the job hunt started for me. And historically, I kind of there was a certain expectation how hiring works or how finding a job in IT works. Well, it used to be employee market or seeker market, so you just wait long enough. But no, everything changed, and it's not just me who got scared of AI. It's a lot of companies who got scared of it. So which prompted another thing is that we need to apply more. We need to do more CVs and do more communication. And luckily we just were given this beautiful tool that completely ruins the privacy of any correspondence, but gets us to automate some part of this. And of course, there is definitely a higher expectation for people to produce CVs that are more tailored to a very specific role. So, I mean, of course, AI introduces a bit of a risk there by introducing new things and inventing skills or a job experience you didn't have, but as long as you can control that, I think it's fine. So I've been fond of this command line tool, which is called Resume CLI, which uses a JSON resume schema. It's a JSON schema that validates certain structure of your CV, so you can have your CV or whatever you have on LinkedIn sort of embedded into a JSON file, and then you're free to render it in whatever way you want, or well, do all sorts of automation. And I did some over the years. I've gathered a bunch of scripts that did certain things, like gathered some stats or generated like total years of experience with certain technology. But it was all child's play until the AI came. I have to mention that this is not the only tool. I mean, there's many tools to do CVs. This is probably a leader in JavaScript land. There's another one in Python. And another one that was fairly popular, which is called Hack My Resume. Doesn't sound very appealing, but it does roughly the same thing. They're almost compatible. And it has a different format called Fresh, which is a bit more expressive, but it also, well, what I've learned that JSON schema is not a very good way to validate data, but there is some disparity between those two formats. So they claim to be compatible, they're not really compatible. So you can convert them with, I don't know, 90% accuracy. Yeah. So as I mentioned, JSON good for automation and simplifies versioning. I always remember which year where I worked. I mean, not that you all had a problem with it with other tools, but I really prefer this way of doing it. Well, I prefer many things to be code. This presentation is code, and my CV is code, and some other things are code. So AI for CV writing, it's a bit of a dangerous way, but as long as we can control it, we can get a bit of a competitive edge on the job market. Maybe we'll see. I don't have I don't have the statistical data alone, and of course I forgot to mention that there are businesses that provide roughly similar thing. I'm not very satisfied. Well, again, I like to have my imaginary privacy over my data, and I like to own my data. There's still a lot of manual work with data entry and updates, and I would really like to just put in a job description and get the best CV possible, and just apply and move on with my life. That's how this very simple idea was born about automated CV recommendations. And I wanted to, well, generating a new CV is a bit more ambitious. I still don't trust AI that much. But I started researching what is possible. And the AI technology space right now, it's much worse than what was in JavaScript in 2017 or a bit earlier. It's much worse. If you go and research anything like courses or anything, there's so much information, it's just impossible to understand anything. It's horrible. And I mean, I know it's probably not just me who's experienced that, but there's also a lot of heretics, I would say, who just promote their no-code solutions, which I really don't like. But yeah. Yeah, so that's how I landed on LangChain. LangChain is a library to do, well, precisely AI-powered workflows or agents, as they call them. And those are really our programs that just interact with the model, and they can interact with many different models. This LangChain is originally a Python library, but then there was developed a LangChain JS library. And if you're, I mean, it's very reasonable to ask, what about performance? I mean, you're still waiting on the network most of the time, so the performance of JavaScript or Python really doesn't matter. The model is so slow that it's irrelevant whether it's not performing to the top of its capabilities, especially in this small use case as I'm looking at right now. Yeah, so I've investigated it a little bit and considered I could do Python, could do JavaScript, but why reinvent the wheel? There is a fairly good implementation in JavaScript, which kind of has roughly the same primitives, and it gives all of these different primitives for you to interact with the model, and then also retain some of the memory of your interactions, which also makes it a bit more efficient. So, like in the chat, where the chat remembers everything, but when the chat remembers it remembers it on their side. Well, with this memory, we can remember it on our application side, which makes it a little bit more cost efficient. But again, I haven't breached 0.001 fraction of a dollar with the request, so I don't know how impactful that is. And yeah, I really don't enjoy JavaScript that much, but I still know it, so why reinvent the wheel? And I just got back to coding, and yeah, docs are a bit chaotic, but as long as you grasp the conceptual part, which they do a pretty good job at explaining, then it's quite a nice ride. So if you've had an experience with companies such as Apollo in GraphQL land, it's a similar deal where a big company writes a bit of an open source, and then there is something on the side that you can plug in and pay money for. So that's the type of deal LangChain is, which is, I mean, it's not positive if you want to get stuff done. Yeah, for reference, there's this repository with awesome AI tools. There's, as you might know already, there's many repositories that are dedicated to awesome anything, awesome Python or awesome data engineering. And it's kind of like a junkyard of all kinds of tooling with no moderation. It's just really hard to navigate. It's just for reference to point out that it's really a chore. Yeah. I'm going to show you a bit of code. It's not going to be, I hope it's not going to be very boring. This time I'm experimented a little bit with showing the code in a little bit different way than I usually do. So yeah, so all I wanted to do is to take a job description, take my CV, and figure out what is it that I can generate. So what I figured out is that generating a new CV is not always working really well, because it tends to hallucinate and invent things that weren't really, well, that are not grounded in truth. So I think the best solution would be with some kind of human moderation, and LangChain actually offers that. But I mean, the way they offer that out of the box is with terminal-based human interaction, which is, I think, maybe not the best user experience, but for me, it's fine. So yeah, it's very easy to set up a tiny pipeline doing stuff like that, and I'm going to show you how. They support prompt templates, and yeah, I wanted to output structured data with edit suggestions. Yeah, why this matters. I just got tired of copy pasting from ChatGPT, and I think there's a lot of new doors, a lot of new opportunities that are opening up the more of this added value you transfer into your own solution. Yeah, as I mentioned, many new ideas. came out. Yeah. Yeah. Before I'm gonna show you a little. Maybe I'm gonna show you a little bit of code first. So yeah, very simple library. You just create an instance of your agent, and they have bindings for many different AIs, many different models. You can run it locally if you're rich and have a very powerful graphics card, or in the cloud, or whatever. And I mean, for the sake of simplicity, this is the most the simplest way to go about it. But what I was really interested is in getting a structured output, and I mean, yeah. Sorry if it sounds like I was living under the rock, but to me it was a kind of pleasant discovery that language models can generate structured output very well, actually. And often it comes with this validation. There's this popular library called Zot. Maybe you've used it. Anybody used Zot before? Yeah, very popular library in JavaScript. But I'm pretty sure in Python there's something that is an alternative. I mean, most of the programming languages have some runtime validation library. And this is what it is. We just define the structure of what we expect, feed it to the model, and say we expect this roughly. And then it gives us that. So, yeah. And then we have to also pass the prompt, which is the text. And there could be different ways to define prompt. It could be a string, but there is also an internal sort of class for building prompts with a little bit more functionality, where it can embed named parameters, kind of like in Python, or in many other languages as well. Yeah, and yeah, they have this this functionality that allows you to have a structured output. But as you can see, I mean, I haven't written a lot of code, and it's already getting a bit cluttered. So I have to send something there, create a new instance, and again, and it's getting a little bit too much. So there is a way to avoid clutter, which is a very nice way that they introduced. They have this abstraction called runnable sequence, which allows you to compose your things and pass one result of one model to another behind the scenes without storing intermediate value. Of course, you will ask, how do you debug that? So in AI world, there is a completely different way to debug stuff. So I don't really show this here, but LangChain has a paid proposal called Langsmith, which is a library that plugs into your code, and then it draws a diagram of your workflow. So these workflows, so the workflow I have is very simple. There is no decision making, but you might have a workflow which does some decision making, which has some branching. So that diagram would reflect that. So you would get a dashboard that you have to pay for, but you still get the dashboard, and you see what is happening. And that approach is not unique to LangChain. Many of those AI tools, be it a low-code tool or this one, they also kind of try to give you a visual representation of what are decision nodes there, what goes through what, and then so you can see what are the intermediate results. So yeah, a little bit strange, the debugging out of the window. Yeah, and this is how you use this runnable sequence, where we can compose what is it that we do. We do one prompt, and then we pass it to our parser, and then we could pass it to something else, and then so on and so forth. And those are, yeah, they're just parsers. Oh, or not parsers. Those are like, they're supposed to be the abstractions they provide. It's not, it's a bit, it's not as transparent as I would like to be, but as any pipeline in any programming language, it looks like there is less code, so it must be good. Yeah. Yeah. And before I'm going to go into next topic, I'm going to show you a little demo of what it actually does. It's not super sophisticated. I mean, there's some stuff that it could do that it is sophisticated. So I prepared the results already. So I fed a CV, not my own CV. I just generated synthetic data because I've learned how to do that. And I fed the, oh, I'm showing the wrong code. Yes, wrong code again. So, and we're here. Yes, so this is pretty much the output that I wanted to have. So I wanted to have an idea of what is it that is required for the job from the job description, whether there is any experience that is required, whether there is any special requirements that I could highlight in my CV. Because as you know, you're not doing this the first year. The longer you work, the more stuff you do, and then you have to fit it in one page, ideally, which is not gonna happen, but if you have that ambition, it's getting hard. So that is the idea, and I have some structured output which tells me what to do next. So can I so well it looks like this person has not enough TypeScript experience, or they need to learn a little bit about CSS and stuff like that. So it's giving a bit of hints. So of course there's many ideas that of what it could do, including maybe even interview preparation. There's also online businesses that can do that. So this is not a monopoly. But I really enjoyed working on this project, and it was a healthy exercise to sort of understand what is the programming work that there is left to be done for all of us, or for some of us. Another topic that I didn't really touch is the retrieval of augmented generation, and that's kind of a big part when you work with larger data sets. Luckily for me, my data set is one CV and one job description, so it's fairly easy. So it's not really fitting into having more stuff. But if I were, I can tell you a little bit about this retrieval of augmented generation. And luckily for us, this LangChain actually comes with a very impactful and very tiny course that explains all of these things. So if you're interested in learning more about this and feeling yourself more confident, I would heavily recommend to spend an hour and a half on this course. That is all it takes, and you're gonna get way more confidence about all of this than before. I was really surprised that I mean, from my experience in, for example, in JavaScript land, finding learning materials or good learning materials at the time was very hard. So this was kind of a breeze. So it made it all much easier. And after this course, you 100% will be able to do this. So taking a lot of documents and doing some work on them. The reason why you need them, they explain, but I could also explain, probably a lot of you know that, is because models, they don't remember a lot of stuff. So this is kind of a way to make their limited memory virtually infinite. And the way this RAG works is that it builds a huge, well, you basically build it yourself. You take your textual data and you build a huge matrix with all the words and how similar they are. And this is an oversimplification because it's a multi-dimensional matrix. So this matrix is also stored in a specialized database, but I mean not so specialized, because even Postgres can store those, and then you can query Postgres as you run your agent, and then ask for hints from your own data. Yeah. So previously, like in my early career, my mindset was, I'm just gonna learn everything. I'm gonna learn all the new technologies, I'm gonna learn all the programming languages, I'm gonna learn all the new libraries. And then the reality is just, that's not gonna happen. I mean, you know that probably. But for me, it took a little bit of time to understand that. But on a different side of this is that it's always possible to catch up. And I mean, with all this marketing and speculation that is happening, we develop this fear, the fear of missing this technology out. What I'm trying to say is that there is not a lot that you miss out. I mean, I feel like it's possible to catch up fairly quickly. Of course, it's a bit naive. Yes, I'm being a bit naive. There is a lot of complexity in models, but yeah, just yeah. what I would propose is to have a look at it if you haven't, and to build something, and then you're gonna get slightly better sleep, I would say. Yeah. Well, I must say I have procrastinated the time to start doing it for a very long time, precisely because of the things that I hope to not to find there. But what I've discovered that there's a lot of stuff that we could do as programmers. There's a lot of added value. There's a lot of engineering to be done, a lot of software engineering to be done in writing AI agents. And of course, not all of the work that we do has to be AI agents, but there specifically, there's a lot of work, I'm pretty sure. There's dozens of databases to integrate to, and somebody has to figure that out. And it's not the AI model who's gonna figure that out. Somebody needs to learn all of that as well. Yeah. So yeah, it was actually super straightforward to integrate with the modern AI stack. It's very much plug and play, partially because a lot of people worked on that, but also from the engineering side, it's also not that scary. And I would like to encourage you, if you have been in a similar situation, to dive into it. And yeah, there are some benefits to be saw there. Yeah. Are there any takers for the questions? Anything about LangChain, or yeah?
I have a question about LangChain. So did you consider to put the whole, like not just the requirements, right? That you say like how many years, what languages, but the whole like job description into the model?
Yeah, that's what's happening.
Okay.
It's just, I mean, you want to reduce the amount of data. So realistically, we would need to feed it to the model to strip the data we don't need.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
So I just fit the entire thing. Yeah, it's really straightforward. We just feed text and get structured output.
Yep.
Did you actually use it to apply for jobs?
Yeah.
How was the response rate? Is there any concern that maybe companies might be detecting if something is AI generated, and then is it different from before you used this tool? That's what I mean.
I wouldn't say. I think it's just saved a lot of time for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Of course, I mean, one thing that I have to stress here is that human interaction is essential. So you have to pretty much moderate every step, because it just comes up with things and it just adds things that you didn't do.
Because what I hear is that there is many more people applying, and I wonder how many of those are generated.
Yeah.
And maybe companies are defending against this.
Yeah.
And so your application might be.
Yeah. So I have a strategy, around that, is that my CV is actually handmade. So I didn't generate the data that is there. So what I'm looking for is just to add stuff that I'm missing, or get suggestions of what I might not be writing there that I should be. Mm-hmm. So I want the model to speculate a little bit, to hallucinate a little bit, and tell me, oh, maybe you did this that you forgot to mention, and maybe they ask for that as well. So it's more of that kind of angle. So generating stuff with AI it's really getting in your head, because like when I see a slide like this, when I see like a list with stuff, I used to write a lot of documentation that looked like this, but now AI always responds this, like it responds with lists, and